Hello everyone, my name is Bridget and today we're going to talk about the 5 mistakes to avoid when starting a raised bed garden. But first, go ahead and click that subscribe button and that little bell notification next to it so you don't miss any great Kellogg Garden videos. Kellogg Garden is bringing in backyard gardeners, master gardeners, homesteaders, landscape and garden professionals, you name it, they're coming in to help us grow even more this next season. So make sure you don't miss it, hit that subscribe button. And any resources I talk about will be in the description, so make sure to check out that description for helpful links. Okay, so let's get started. The 5 mistakes to avoid when starting a raised bed garden. I am the perfect person to talk about this because I've made them all. There are actually probably more than 5 mistakes. I could make 5 of these videos and still not cover all of them. Some I made on purpose, some I made an accident. If you've already made some of the mistakes, I'll talk about how to get around them. But if I can stop you from making the mistake or help you avoid it, then I'll feel good about that too. All right, so first mistake is bad location. In some cases, again, you may have limited space where location you just really don't have that much control over. For me, I'm on about 3 acres of land right now. Which is great, it's phenomenal. But where I can put these raised beds, it's a temporary location, so I'm a little bit limited on space. So the first thing is to look at where you want to put the beds. And the most important thing in gardening is sun, soil, and water, right? So we want to look at all of those things. Right now, this is east. Okay, so right up here, this is east, that's west, that's south, and that's north. Now I have some beds that I put over here in this fenced area, and then I have some beds that I have over here as well up against the house. So the good thing about this location is in the spring right here I get lots and lots of sun, but back here I don't. And part of the problem is this beautiful hill and these citrus trees. So the sun rises right over there in the spring. In the fall, which we're in right now, it actually rises a bit more this way. So this area in the spring gets about 10 hours of sunshine. But that little caged area that I'm going to talk about where all the mistakes are, that area only gets about 8 hours, 6 to 8. And when we go into fall, the amount of sunshine we're getting is going down even more for both locations. So when you're thinking about where to put your raised beds, sun is key. Now I can grow things with less sun, but some of the things that I like to grow, tomatoes for instance, did not do well over there. They did do well over here, right? And these little cherry tomatoes actually, well, these aren't cherry tomatoes, but the smaller tomatoes, the little pear-shaped ones, they don't need as much sun as some of my big, beautiful heirlooms did. So knowing your sun is really, really important. Now, I'll show you another location. These beds right here are actually on wheels. That's one way that I'm getting around my location, but these beds over here are not. Now, the second mistake to avoid is not to pay attention to your water sources. Now you can run a hose, and I've got a water source right here. I've actually got another one on the side of the house. But running a hose and watering by hand, you may do that in the beginning, but later you may want an irrigation system. You may want drip irrigation because it does make things a lot easier. So knowing where your water sources are and how you're going to utilize them is really important. So think about that, because if you're too far away, you're going to limit your options. Now, the third mistake to avoid is not thinking about those pests. Oh, those wonderful pests that are out there. This big guy here can be a pest, but he's not the one I'm talking about. We, on this property, have ground squirrels, we have field mice. We don't have groundhogs, moles, or voles, which is good. But if you do have those ground diggers, then you need to think about that when you're building your beds. The beds that I have on wheels are completely enclosed, but the ones that I've built over here that we'll take a closer look at, those are open on the bottom. So if I had groundhogs, moles, voles, anything that likes to dig up and eat the roots, the plant from below, then I would want to cover the bed where we're going to lay the bed first. And you can use chicken wire, or you can use something a little hardier like we've used for this little trellis. So right here, you can use hardware cloth, you can use some of this stronger metal. Lay that down before you do the bed, before you build the bed, right below it. And then once you put your bed up, you'll be able to protect your plants from those little ground critters that like to eat from below. When it comes to ground squirrels, on the other hand, and mice, you're gonna have to protect from the top. Okay, so now we're inside that fenced-in enclosure that was behind me, and we're gonna talk about mistake number 4 to avoid when building your raised beds, and that's in design. And there's 2 parts to design. There's cost, and then there's function. So this space here is 10 feet by 10 feet. So I'm limited on what I can put in here. The other area of our property, I'm not limited on space. So in designing those beds, I was thinking about cost. Here, I still wanted big beds. It's a temporary space for us. I'm just testing some things out. These beds aren't going to be here that long, and I wanted to go pretty big with the beds. I recommend getting yourself some paper and drawing everything out, and then really doing some homework and looking at costs of lumber and soil as you're designing this. So I wanted as big a beds as possible. Most of us do. You want to grow as much as possible. I wanted to grow lots of veggies out here, and then also companion plant, bring in some flowers and some other plants that would help with pollinators and deter pests. So I decided I wanted to push the beds up against the fence. These beds are actually 7 feet by 2.5 feet. Gives me plenty of space in the middle, but I can't get to the beds from that side. The fence is there. And then I pushed it all the way against the fence up here. So I have access to the beds from 2 sides. And I was okay with that. I really was. But what I didn't think about was the future. And that is this trellis behind me. So we decided, or I decided, to put up this arch because I wanted to go vertical. I've grown loofah on it, cucumbers, now peas. It's a DIY project, cattle panel that we cut and then just screwed in. So I can take it off at any point. But what happens is I can't get to that back corner very easily. So it limits me. I can do a bit of acrobatics back there, but it's not the easiest. If I had thought about it, I probably would have made these beds 2 feet shorter and given myself access on that side. So in your planning, I recommend that you really draw things out and think about what you're going to be growing, what you want to grow, what you might grow later. Look at the sun. We've already talked about, your first thing to consider, which is sun exposure. You can write that out also. But definitely design this out. So the other thing on the lumber here, I wasn't limited on cost there either. I ended up going on Facebook Marketplace and seeing if anybody was getting rid of wood in my area. I found somebody, gave them a few bucks, and I got to take all the wood I wanted. So then it was just about cutting it down and building the beds. When getting reclaimed wood, just make sure that you check the source of the wood. I didn't want wood that was painted or had been treated with anything in case that leached into the soil. So keep that in mind when you're building it. Now, if I were buying the wood like we did for the other beds, then I have to look at the cost of the wood, and you can get your 2x4s in 8 feet or 10 feet. Cedar, I think in my local hardware store, it was 8 feet. Redwood is 10 feet. There's like a $2 difference. For a bed like this, I would need four pieces. So I would probably go for the redwood, unless I was going to cap it off, right? So I could sit on it, then I would need more lumber for that. I'd probably need 5 or 6, maybe 5. 5 for that. So that would be a factor. I would put this in here and make sure that I'm looking at that cost. Cedar, actually it's only a $1.50 difference. Cedar would cost me $10 for 8 foot, and then redwood for the 10 foot would cost me $11.50. So I would factor that in when deciding on the beds. The second thing to factor in is putting soil in the beds. So to do that, you're going to actually go from the inside of the beds. On this one, my length is 80 inches, my width is 27 inches, and then my depth is 9 inches. So taking that information, then I'm going to go online and use the handy dandy soil calculator to figure out how many bags of soil I need to put in this bed. And we'll have links to resources in the description, so you can go down and click that. When you first start, it'll ask you what your project is on the Kellogg website, soil calculator. You put in garden bed, then you put in your dimensions. It starts with feet, I switch it to inches, and then from there it'll tell you by cubic feet how much you need. You can then also, there's depending on what soil you're getting and whether you're buying it in 2 cubic foot, 3 cubic foot, or larger, how many bags. So when I did the calculation for this, 2 cubic feet, I would need 6 bags. It would be 11.25, 11.25 cubic feet for one bed. So I'd need 6 bags and 6 bags. So again, when you're factoring in that cost, write it all down so you're not surprised later and you're not making tons of trips back and forth to your garden center to get that soil. Okay, so that leads me to mistake number 5, and that is not using the right soil in your raised beds. Now, when you're growing in a raised bed, it's an enclosed environment. Even though ours are open to the native soil, it's still an enclosed environment, and you're going to deal with different things in an enclosed environment. There's more soil compaction in this. We want well-draining soil. We want nutrient-rich soil. These plants take up quite a bit of nutrients from the soil, so we want to start off with a really good base. I'm still going to have to amend the soil as these plants are growing, and then next season before I plant, I'll amend again because these plants have taken up so much nutrients, plus there's been a bit of compaction, so I'll be amending. But you really want to start off with good soil in the beginning. And when you go into your local garden center, you're going to see potting soil, topper, you're going to see raised bed soil, garden soil, all sorts of different names. Garden soil is meant to be mixed with your native soil, right? Your native soil, if it's clay-based, it's not going to be well draining. You might need to amend for that. You might need to amend for pH because growing edibles, right, we need a good pH for them. And your soil may not be as nutrient and mineral rich as you want, right? So you would amend for that. Here on raised beds and containers, we're using raised bed soil or potting soil. It's actually been formulated for these environments. It's been formulated for the proper pH, good drainage, and nutrient rich. And that's what we want. If you start off with the right soil, you're going to start your plants off right. So, and that's a big one. Remember, we talked about the 3 things that are going to give us success: soil, sun, and water. So don't skimp on the soil. Okay, so let's recap our 5 mistakes to avoid. 1 is sun exposure. You want to make sure that you understand your sun exposure and you have the proper sun exposure for what you're growing. 2 is water. If you can, you want to be as close to a water source as possible, or at the very least plan out your watering, because you may water by hand in the beginning, but as your garden grows, it's going to be hard to maintain consistent watering. So you may bring in a drip irrigation system like this, and you just want to make sure that you're planned out, your beds are in the right place, and you can get that water out there quickly. Number 3 is pests, thinking about those pests. Especially your ground pests. If you're going to build beds that are open on the bottom, then take into account if you have those diggers that like to come up and eat your plants from below. Go ahead and put something down like a chicken wire or a hardware cloth so you're protecting them. And then number 4 is design of the beds. Design for cost and function, right? Make sure your spacing is correct. And then number 5 is soil. Use the right soil. Make sure that you're starting yourself off with a great foundation, and then you're going to grow from there, because you are going to need some organic fertilizers and nutrients, maybe compost, worm castings. There's all these things that you're going to get into as you're growing to meet the needs of the individual plants that you're growing. Okay, so those are the 5 mistakes to avoid. I appreciate you joining me today, and I will see you guys soon. So happy gardening.